Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, 6 years ago, with Francesca and Daniela, we started a series which was called Ephemeropterae. Ephemeropterae is a plural of those insects which are born and die on the same day. Ephemeropterae, ephemeral, is a metaphor on performance, on poets, scientists, and artists whom we invited to contribute with a speech, with a spoken word art on Friday evenings. We did it for 6 seasons, 6 summer seasons, and actually the last one of the whole series is supposed to be today. So we moved it from our garden, and in those 6 years we had privilege to display loads of cutting-edge scientists, architects, artists, poets, musicians, whatever. We had fantastic audiences, very focused. And we had also this extreme privilege also to welcome really legends of modernity, legends of modern and modernist poetry. We had fabulous Wanda Coleman with us, so-called LA blues woman, the pioneer of punk poetry in US. We had Lydia Lunch with us, we had John Giorno with us, we have Charles Bernstein and all of these legends. And so this is just a continuity. Tonight, I'm more than honored and happy that LKJ, Linton Kwesi Johnson, who is the true pioneer of dub poetry and a person who was very much associated with Caribbean British cultures or subcultures in London since last 50 years, and who was the activizer of rocksteady and reggae scenes and Black Atlantic issues of Britain. Linton, welcome.
Good evening. I have, all day, I've been wondering to myself, what on earth am I doing here? You know, this is a conference of curators and people involved with the law of the sea and so on and so forth. But, you know, I found the discussions interesting, particularly the one about change, institutions and change. I myself belong to an institution. I belong to the George Padmore Institute in London. We are an archive that holds material relating to the social, cultural, and political history of the African, Caribbean, and Asian communities in Britain from the post-World War II period. Our material cover over 50 years. We have materials on the Black Parents Movement, the Black Educational Movement, the Caribbean Artists Movement, the International Book Fair of Radical Black and Third World Books, which ran between 1982 and 1995, the campaign to free political prisoners in Kenya, a whole heap of stuff. So you can Google us. I'm one of the founding trustees, and you can Google us. You can find us on the internet. I don't assume that any of you know anything about me, so I will say a little bit. I am Jamaican by birth, and my parents belong to that post-World War II generation of Caribbean migrants who went to the mother country to help with the business of reconstruction after the Second World War. We were in for a rude awakening when we arrived, and most of my poems, a lot of my poems are about the black experience in Britain. I'm reading from my selected poems, which covers the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. And I write in Jamaican English, or as we prefer to call it, Jamaican Creole. The first poem I'm going to do is called 5 Nights of Bleeding. And this is the first poem that I wrote, and people began to call me a poet after I'd written it and recited it. I work within the reggae tradition. I'm more known, even though I've published 5 books of poems, people know me as a reggae artist. I've toured all over the world with a band performing reggae music. And most of what I perform as reggae music are poems which began life in book form before they became records. 5 Nights of Bleeding was written in the early 70s, early 1970s. I hadn't even begun to try to find my voice. It was a period in my career of what I would call the urgency of expression. The 70s verse I call urgency of expression. The 80s verse I call learning my craft. And the 90s verse I call finding my voice. So 5 Nights of Bleeding is how it all began, and it's a poem about a number of violent incidents which occurred in various parts of London in the early 1970s involving the black youth of my generation. 5 Nights of Bleeding for Leroy Harris, who had his throat cut on the 4th of the 5 nights. Madness, madness, madness tight on the heads of the rebels, the bitterness erupts like a hot blast. Broke glass, rituals of blood on the burning, served by a cruel infighting. 5 nights of horror and of bleeding. Broke glass, cold blades as sharp as the eyes of hate and the stabbings. It's war amongst the rebels, madness, madness, war. Night number 1 was in Brixton. Soprano B sound system was a beating out a rhythm with a fire, coming down his reggae, reggae wire. It was a sound shaking down your spinal column, a bad music tearing up your flesh, and the rebels them start a fighting, the youth them just turn wild. It's war amongst the rebels, madness, madness, war. Night number 2 down at Shepherd's, right up Railton Road. It was a night named Friday when everyone was high on brew or drew a pound or 2 worth of collie. Sound coming down Neville King's music iron. The rhythm just bubbling and backfiring, raging and rising when suddenly the music cut. Steel blade drinking blood in darkness. It's war amongst the rebels. Madness, madness, war. Night number 3, over the river, right outside the rainbow. Inside, James Brown was screaming soul. Outside, the rebels were freezing cold. Babylonian tyrants descended, pounced on the brothers who were bold. So with a flick of the wrist, a jab and a stab, the song of blades was sounded. The bile of oppression was vomited, and 2 policemen wounded. Righteous, righteous war. Night number 4 at a blues dance, a blues dance. 2 rooms packed and the pressure pushing up, hot, hot heads. Rituals of blood in a blues dance, broke glass, splintering fire, axes, blades, brain blast. Rebellion rushing down the wrong road, storm blowing down the wrong tree. And Leroy bleeds near death on the 4th night in a blues dance on a black rebellious night. It's war amongst the rebels, madness, madness, war. Night number 5 at the Telegraph. Vengeance walked through the doors, so slow, so smooth, so tight and ripe and smash. Broke glass. A bottle finds a head and the shell of the fire hurt cracks. The victim feels fear, finds hands, holds knife, finds throat. Oh, the stabbings and the bleeding and the blood. It's war amongst the rebels, madness, madness, war. Now, as a youngster, how I got interested in poetry was at school, there was nothing in the curriculum that remotely captured my imagination. But after I left school, or during my last year of school, I joined the Black Panther movement, a Black Power organization. Our slogan was Black Power, People's Power. And discovered black literature. I had absolutely no idea that there was a body of literature written by black authors about black people, because there was nothing on the school curriculum that gave me the slightest indication that such a body of literature existed. And I came across a book called The Souls of Black Folk. And it wasn't poetry, it was prose, but some of the most beautiful prose I've ever read. Written by the African-American scholar, W.E.B. Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folk, where he talked about, this book was published around 1902 or thereabouts, and he talked about, he said the problem of the 20th century was the problem of the color line. And he talked about the veil that was smothering black lives in the United States of America. And I found that I could relate what I was reading, which was basically about the experiences of African Americans in the post-emancipation period. I could relate that to my own experience as a Jamaican growing up in England. And that book changed my life, The Souls of Black Folk. It stirred up something within me and made me want to articulate how I felt and how the generation of black youth to which I belong felt about growing up in a racially hostile environment. I was very fortunate at the time to have as my mentors to stimulate my interest in poetry, to have as my mentors two remarkable Caribbean men, the Jamaican poet, novelist and broadcaster Andrew Salkey, and the Trinidadian publisher, poet and political activist John LaRose. John LaRose was a remarkable man. He was one of the founders of the George Padmore Institute. John referred to the first generation of post-Caribbean, post-World War II Caribbean migrants in Britain as the heroic generation. And he called them the heroic generation because of what they were able to achieve for themselves in spite of the racial hostility with which they were met. They were limited in what they could do to resist racial oppression, but they did what they could. They had responsibility, so they didn't have a free hand. They had to be mindful about losing their jobs because they had to put bread on the table, pay the rent, put their children through school, and send money back home to their relatives in the Caribbean. The heroic generation, he called them. Well, I belong to the next generation, the second generation. And my generation, we refuse to tolerate the things that our parents reluctantly tolerated. We had no responsibilities. We were unfettered. And we rebelled against racism in Britain. And through our rebellion, we helped to make Britain a better place than it was when I was a youth. This poem describes some of a section, if you like, of the rebel generation to which I belong. It's called It Not Funny. People saying this, people saying that about the youth of today, how them carrying on away. And it not funny. It not funny. Them we take chance to get a little Kyle. Them we take chance to live it up a while. Them we take chance to live it up in style. Them we take chance to go jump and prance. Them we take chance and them love blues dance. Them we take chance and them don't count the cost. People saying this, people saying that about the youth of today, how them cars in are free. And it not funny. It not funny. Them we take chance and them love cuss ras. Them we take chance. Them we skip them class. Them we take chance. Figure papa little style. Them we take chance. Them do it all the while. Them we take chance. But some of them last. Them we take chance. And them don't count the cost. People saying this, people saying that about the youth of today, about the way them stay. And it not funny. It not funny. Them we take chance. Forget a little Collie. Them we take chance. With your little sister Sally, them we take chance. For them feel them force. Them we take chance, but them got no course. Them we take chance, but them is not advanced. Them we take chance, and them don't count the cost. People saying this, people saying that about the youth of today, how them really stay. And it not funny. No, sir. It not funny. We were not all angels, but by and large, we were just normal kids, you know, growing up in England, doing the things that kids of our age did. Of course, there were delinquents amongst us, and some of us were involved in petty crime. That gave the police a golden opportunity to criminalize a whole section of my generation of black youth. Even kids coming home from Sunday school would be arrested by the police and charged with Sas. During the 70s, there was a campaign to get rid of this law that we call the Sas Law. It's a law of suspicion. Sus being short for suspicion. Invariably, you would be arrested and charged with attempting to steal from persons unknown. And in those days, it wasn't trial by jury, it was trial in front of a magistrate. And as long as the police officer was able to convince the magistrate that he had reasonable grounds to believe that you intended to commit the crime, that was all that was required to obtain a conviction. So we had this campaign. By the way, the Sas Law was in fact a piece of 19th century legislation called the Vagrancy Act, used during the time of Queen Victoria to control the movements of the unemployed in England. It had been dormant on the statute books for generations, until the black youth of my generation arrived on the scene, and it was miraculously rediscovered and dusted off and used against us. Anyway, this is a poem I contributed to the campaign, a successful campaign to get this law abolished. It takes the form of a letter written from prison in England, addressed to a mother somewhere in the Caribbean. The writer of the letter is explaining to his mother how he comes to find himself in prison with his younger brother. It's called Sonny's Letter. Brixton Prison, Jebb Avenue, London Southwest 2, England. Dear Mama, good day. I hope that when these few lines reach you, they may find you in the best of health. Mama, I really don't know how to tell you this, 'cause I did make a solemn promise to take care of little Jim and try my best to look out for him. Mama, I really did try my best. But nonetheless, me sorry to tell you, say, poor little Jim get a rest. It was the middle of the rush hour when everybody just a hustle and a bustle to go home for them evening shower. Me and Jim stand up waiting for a bus, not causing no fuss. When all of a sudden a police van pull up, out jump 3 policemen, the whole of them carrying baton. Them walk straight up to me and Jim. One of them hold on to Jim, say him taking him in. Jim tell him to let go of him, for him not do nothing, and him not a thief, not even a button. Well, Jim start to wriggle. The police start to giggle. Mama, make I tell you what them do to Jim. Mama, make I tell you what them do to him. Them thump him in him belly and it turn to jelly. Them lick him pan him back and him rib get pop. Them lick him pan him head but it tough like lead. Them kick him in him seed and it started to bleed. Mama, I just couldn't stand up there and not do nothing. So me juke one in him eye and him started to cry. Me thump one in him mouth and him started to shout. Me kick one pan him shin and him started to spin. Me thump him pan him chin and him drop pan a bin and crash and dead. Mama, more policemen come down and beat me to the ground. Them charge Jim for sus. Them charge me for murder. Mama, don't fret. Don't get depressed and downhearted. Be of good courage till I hear from you. I remain your son, Sonny. Now, in the history, that's all right, no, that's all right, that's all right, that's all right. In the history of the black experience in Britain, the most significant date is 1981, the post-World War II history, that is, because there's been a black presence in Britain from the time of the Romans. 1981. In January of 1981, Yvonne Ruddock was 16 years old, and she was celebrating her birthday at 439 New Cross Road in southeast London. Around that time, there was a campaign against West Indian or Caribbean people having parties with so-called loud music. There was a member of parliament called Jill Knight from Birmingham who was most vociferous in her condemnation of West Indian parties. In 1971, in fact, there was an arson attack on a West Indian party where a lot of people got badly burnt. No one died, luckily. And the police arrested and charged 2 people with the arson. They were successfully convicted. On the 17th of January 1981 at 439 New Cross Road, when Yvonne Ruddock was having her birthday party, some fascist, some racist, threw an incendiary device through the window of the house, which resulted in a fire in which 13 young black people died and 26 were seriously injured. It was the police themselves who informed Mrs. Ruddock, Yvonne's mother, that it was an arson attack. There were eyewitness accounts of someone pelting something through the window and driving off in a white car. within less than 48 hours, without having carried out any forensic investigation, the police ruled completely out of hand the possibility that it could have been a racist arson attack. The black communities mobilized ourselves immediately and formed the New Cross Massacre Action Committee. The police spent their resources trying to discredit the New Cross Massacre Action Committee and did everything they possibly could to cover up the cause of the fire and who had done it. At the time of this tragedy, there were no messages of condolence from the Queen. There were no messages of condolence from the Prime Minister. Normally, after something like that happens, the police do their investigation. After they've completed it, you have an inquest. In the case of the New Cross fire, the New Cross massacre, the inquest was held with indecent haste some 3 months after the fire. The New Cross Massacre Action Committee mobilized 20,000 people or thereabouts, and we marched from 439 New Cross Road in southeast London to Hyde Park in the center of London. Someone delivered a letter of protest at number 10 Downing Street. They had never seen nothing like that in England. 20,000 people. We shut down the whole of the city of London for that day. And that day was the 2nd of March, 1981. It was known as the Black People's Day of Action. And it was a watershed moment. A watershed moment. In April of 1981, a couple months after the Black People's Day of Action, the police in my neighborhood in Brixton, South London, launched an operation called Operation Swamp 81, where they went about harassing and intimidating, stopping and searching black people going about their everyday lawful business. Well, enough was enough. We had a riot, we had an uprising. And those riots, those uprisings spread to every major inner city area in England. In Manchester, in Liverpool, in Birmingham, Bristol, and so on and so forth. I wrote a poem about it, and I called it The Great Insurrection. It was in April 1981, down in the ghetto of Brixton, that the Babylon them caused such a friction that it bring about a great insurrection. And it spread all over the nation. It was truly an historical occasion. It was event of the year, and I wish I had been there when we run riot all over Brixton, when we mash up plenty police van, when we mash up the Wicked One plan, when we mash up the Swamp 81, for what? To make the ruler them understand that we not take no more of them oppression. And when me check out the ghetto grapevine, to find out all I could have find, every rebel just a revel in them story. Them a talk about the power and the glory. Them a talk about the burning and the looting. Them a talk about the smashing and the grabbing. Them a tell me about the vanquish and the victory. Them said the Babylon them went too far. So what? We had was for born to care. And 1 and 2 innocent get mar. But what? Not so it got some time in a war in Star. Not so it got some time in a war. Them say we burn down the judge. We could have burned the landlord. We burn down the judge. We never burn the landlord. When we run riot all over Brixton. When we mash up plenty police van. When we mash up the Wicked One plan, when we mash up the Swamp 81. Them say we commandeer car and we gather ammunition. We build with barricade and the wicked catch afraid. We send out, we scout, figure find them where about, then we farm up with posse and we make we raid. Well, now them run go plan counter action. But the plastic bullet and the water cannon will bring a blam blam, will bring a blam blam. Never mind Scarman, will bring a blam blam. Scarman, that I referred to there, was of course Lord Scarman, who was appointed to conduct a commission of inquiry into the reasons for these inner city uprisings, as they were called. Of course, we had more uprisings in the 80s. In 1985, we had riots in every major inner city area. The one in Brixton, which was the first, again, was triggered by the shooting in the back of a woman called Cherry Gross. The police had come there looking for her son, kicked down the door. She was coming down the stairs and saw them and ran back up the stairs, and Detective Lovelock shot her in her back. In Tottenham, North London, the police illegally entered the house of Cynthia Jarrett looking for her son again, pushed her over, and she died from an heart attack. Well, the youth said to them, we said to ourselves, well, they're killing our mothers, we can't allow that to happen. Riots, uprisings. But that period was a watershed moment because around that time, soon after those uprisings, the British government sat up and took note of the fact that we had power and we could mobilize that power. We had built autonomous political organizations because, you know, John LaRose used to say, what we leave, we carry, referring to the migration from the Caribbean to Britain. What we leave, we carry. In other words, we had a history of political organization in the anti-colonial struggles that were being waged in the Caribbean before we went to Britain. And that was brought to bear on our experiences in the mother country. What happened, in fact, was that, and ironically under a Tory government, I think it was Heseltine, who is now Lord Heseltine. He was the Minister of the Environment, and he put in motion some what was called inner city partnerships, where they set about the regeneration of inner city areas and so on. And some of us in the black communities benefited from that. But things began to change slowly for us after those uprisings. How are we doing for time? My God. You've just had your dinner. I don't want you all to have indigestion. Okay. This is a stock-taking poem where, going towards the end of the 1980s, a black middle class had begun to emerge. We had elected in 1987 the first black members of parliament, Paul Boateng, Bernie Grant, Diane Abbott. I forget the other guy's name from Leicester. And things began to change slowly. So this is a kind of a stock-taking poem, and it basically asks the question, how far had we reached then, by then, towards the end of the 1980s? How far had we reached in our struggles for racial equality and social justice? Things and times. Duped, doped, demoralized. Dizzied, dazed, traumatized. Blinded by resplendent light of love, dazzled by the firmament of freedom, him couldn't detect deceit, all when it kick him in him teeth. Him couldn't cry corruption and believe in a man. Him never know about clique, him did humble, him did meek. Him never know intrigue, him never in at that the league. Him never did understand that on the road to socialism you could buck up nepotism, him wife dangerous, him brother treacherous, and him cousin very vicious. Duped, doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, traumatized. Now like a fragile fragment of light, trapped in the belly of the dark night, like a blind man stupefied and dazed, lost and alone in a mystical maze for days upon days upon days upon days. Watch him drifting across the ocean of life, without a rudder nor anchor nor sail, for days upon days upon days upon days. Call him flotsam of the tides of the times, if you like, lost in the labyrinth of life, if you like. Duped, doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, paralyzed. Shipwreck against the sons of the tides of the times, meditating upon the bad old days. Face down upon the gleaming sea shore, not so certain, not so sure like before. The salt of the sea upon the sun in him eye, and him would give it back if him could cry. The sound of the surge of the sea harmonized with the swaying bamboo trees, and him brains just a tick, all kind of thoughts now in night, like them desperate days of defiance, when young rebels did a fight against oppression, when young rebels did a fling fire bomb, when them march with them banners raised, chanting freedom, chanting justice, chanting blood and fire, when North Crucial Trail was ablaze, taking the struggle to a higher stage. Duped, doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, paralyzed. Now wash up, wet up, mash up, him raise up, catch up and sit up, with him hand upon him jaw and him head a hang down. I consider how young rebels get old. How some sell them soul, some get left out in the cold. Some get elevate, some get depreciate. Some turn middle class, some a gamble race horse. Some a try to live clean, some get vicious and mean. Some plague with doubt, some still a tough it out. One and two a fight the struggle in them head. Lead the leaderless in them head. Win the revolution in them head. Yeah man, all a turn prime minister in them head. Duped, doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, traumatized. Now him wondering, pondering, considering, posing all kind of riddle to himself like, now that we come out of the one room them, and time and fortune been some of we friend. Now that we got we council flat and with this and with that, we color TV and all the mad con. Now that we create some space, enough of we own a little place. Now that we got we MP and we Black JP, Black Span the radio, Black Span TV, we Sir and we Lord and we MBE. We forget, all right, that. Do we need another Moses to take we across the sea? And say, go on, walk across, on a free, as we enter the 21st century? Are we long past that the era, that the stage? And is each and every one who have to rise now to meet the dawning of a different age? Well, him was wondering, pondering, considering, when him hear a voice like the wind say, "Cho, are just things and times, wonders and signs, but not get mystic, be realistic." And him hear a next voice like the sea say, "Sometimes the pungent odor of decay signals say brand new life upon the way." The sea, I just mentioned sea there, that just reminds me of my father. Sea. And I'm trying to make some connections here. The law of the sea and all these lawyers, the law of the sea and the Caribbean Sea and all of that. Very tenuously. My father and my mother separated when I was a kid, and my mother went to England, started another family, got married again. My father stayed in Jamaica and raised some children there too with another woman, lived in the ghetto, had a very hard life, lived in poverty all of his life really. Died at the age of 56 in 1982, having suffered the amputation of both his legs because he had diabetes, suffered a couple of strokes and whatnot. So this is a farewell poem to my father, an elegy, if you like, to my father, who died 1982, age 56. It's called Reggae for Dada. But it's also a poem about Jamaica in the early 1980s. Galang Dada. Galang Guanyasa. You never had no life to live. Just the one life to give. You did your time upon earth. You never get your just desert. Galango smiling at the sun. Galango sata in the palace of peace. Oh, the water it's so deep, the water it's so dark, and it's full of harbor shark. The land is like a rock, slowly shattering to sun, sinking in a sea of calamity, where fear breeds shadows that lurks in the dark. Oh, the water, it's so deep. The water, it's so dark, and it's full of harbor shark. The land is like a rock slowly shattering to sun, sinking in a sea of calamity, where fear breeds shadows that lurks in the dark, where people afraid to walk, afraid to think, afraid to talk, where the present is haunted by the past. I just me born, get to know about storm, learn to cling to the dawn. And when me hear my daddy sick, me quickly pack my grip and take a trip. Me never have no time when me reach. For see no sunny beach when me reach. Just people are living shock, people living back to back amongst cockroach and rat, amongst dirt and disease, subject to terrorist attack, political intrigue, constant grief and no sign of relief. Oh, the grass turned brown, so many trees cut down and the land is overgrown. From country to town is just thistle and thorn in the wound of the poor. It's a miracle how them endure the pain night and day, the stench of decay, the glaring sights of guarded affluence, the arrogant voices, cold eyes of contempt, the mocking symbols of independence. I just am born, get to know about storm, learn to cling to the dawn. And when the news reached me, say my one daddy dead, me catch a plane quick And when me reach my sunny isle, it was the same old style. The money well dry, the bullets them a fly, plenty innocent a die, many rivers run dry, ganja planes flying high. The poor man him a try, you think a little try him try, holding on by and by, when a dollar can buy a little dinner for your fly. Galang dada, galang guan yasa. You never had no life to live, just the one life you give. You did your time on earth, you never get your just dessert. Galango smile in the sun, Galango sata in the palace of peace. I know you couldn't take it, Dada. The anguish and the pain, the suffering, the problems, the strain, struggling in vain to make two ends meet, so that them picnic could have get a little something to eat, to put clothes upon them back, to put shoes upon them feet, when a dollar can buy a little dinner for your fly. I know you try, Dada. You fight a good fight. But the dice them did loaded and the card pack fix. Yet still you reach 56 before you lose your leg wicket. I know you're born ground here, so we bury you a stranger's burying ground, near to Mama and cousin Doris, not far from the quarry, down in August town. I'll do another elegy. Since I'm doing elegies. This one is for a sister poet who died under tragic circumstances in 1996. Her name was Mai Ayim, also known as Mai Opitz. I got to meet her at the International Book Fair of Radical Black and Third World Books. And she was involved in the Afro-German movement in Berlin and the women's movement. She was born in Hamburg. Her mother was German. Her father was from Africa, from Ghana, a medical student from Ghana. And she was raised by German foster parents. She didn't have a very great childhood. She co-authored a book of essays called Showing Our Colors about the experiences of mixed-race women like herself growing up in Germany. And she published a volume of poems called Blues in Black and White. In 1996, she had a nervous breakdown, and it was subsequently discovered that she had multiple sclerosis. And when she got the news, she went to a high-rise building and jumped from the 13th floor. Reggae for Mai Ayim. It's weird how life with death can conspire. To shatter the art's most fragile desire. How history and biography can plot against you, and them angst and them enemy gang up on you. Afro-German warrior woman from Hamburg via Bremen, then finally Berlin. It was in the dazzling atmosphere at the Black Radical Book Fair that me sight you, sweet sister, bright-eyed like hope, like a young antelope who could have cope with the daily, the flowering of the spirit, with the everyday erosion of the soul. Two passing clouds, you and I, in the desert of the sky, exchanging vapor. But in the commerce of the art, was it fair trade in regret, in love and laughter? Me never know, me couldn't tell, me should have sight say. Through all the learning, the teaching, resisting and assisting, the loving, the giving, organizing and defying, that the Kaiser of darkness did capture your heart. That the last time me see you would be the last time me see you. That you was free, falling, screaming, 13 stanzas down, your final poem in blood upon the ground. That so sudden, that so soon, you would have fly out upon a one-way ticket to Ghana, go and catch up with your past amongst your ancestors. We give thanks for the life you share with we. We give thanks for the light you shine upon we. We give thanks for the love you shower upon we. We give thanks for your memory. Finally, my God, finally, I think I'm torn between a poem about poetry and a poem about language. Which one would you like? Language. Okay, let's do the language one. I know that. Towards the end of the Cold War, after the Soviet Union had imploded, and maybe a little bit before then, and the period following in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, a number of acts of barbarism happened in Eastern Europe, Eastern Africa, and the Middle East. And it was during this time that the term ethnic cleansing came into currency. Ethnic cleansing as a way of describing these acts of barbarism. I dislike this phrase intensely. It makes me feel uncomfortable. How can one use the word cleanse, the verb cleanse, in relationship to humanity? We need to be very careful about how we use language, because we don't only negotiate our everyday reality through language. More importantly, we define our humanity through language. To talk about ethnic cleansing, as far as I'm concerned, is a dehumanization of language, and the language of dehumanization. So I wrote this poem called New World Order about it. The killers of Kigali must be sanitary workers. The butchers of Butari must be sanitary workers. The savages of Chatila must be sanitary workers. The beasts of Bosnia must be sanitary workers. In the New World Order. Like a dirty old bandage upon the festering face of humanity, the old order unravel and reveal. Old scar just a broke out in a new sore. Primeval wound that time won't heal. And in the ancient currency of blood, tribal tyrants a settle whole score. The killers of Kigali must be sanitary workers. The butchers of Butari must be sanitary workers. The savages of Chatila must be sanitary workers. The beasts of Bosnia must be sanitary workers. In the New World Order. And it's the same old Cain and Abel syndrome, far more ancient than the fall of Rome. But in the New World Order of atrocity, is a brand new language of barbarity. Mass murder normalized, pogrom rationalized, genocide sanitized, and the ancient clan sin, now named ethnic cleansing. And so the killers of Kigali must be sanitary workers. The butchers of Butari must be sanitary workers. The savages of Chatila must be sanitary workers. The beasts of Bosnia must be sanitary workers in the new world order. Pram in the new world order. That's it. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you. You want to tell them about the CD?
Do you have a power for England is a bit?
No. You want one more? Well, I tell you what. I've bought 10 copies of my book and 10 CDs. I don't want to take them back to London with me, so I hope you got some euros on you.
Each 10.
They're only 10 euros each. One more. He wants England is a bitch, but I don't often do that poem anymore. Not because, the one about poetry, okay. Right. Now, how I got to write this poem was that some years ago, someone brought it to my attention that my name was mentioned in the Oxford Companion to 20th Century Poetry, albeit as a footnote. And there was an entry on so-called dub poetry in the Oxford Companion. And there was a quotation from an older generation of Jamaican poet who described dub poetry as, quote, overcompensation for deprivation, unquote. Well, he was writing dub poetry in his last days, so I don't know what that was all about. In any event, I couldn't sit by idly and just let it go like that, since my name has been largely associated with this so-called dub poetry. So by way of riposte, I wrote this piece. And I have an epigram that goes, most of the straightening is in the tongue. And that's from a poem by a Jamaican Rastafarian poet called Bongo Jerry. I make reference to Buthelezi. You all know who Buthelezi is, chief of the Zulus, who was the leader of the Inkatha movement in South Africa, a thorn in the flesh of Nelson Mandela's ANC and collaborators with the apartheid regime. And I also make reference to Lance Percival, who was a very popular English comic actor who made a name for himself doing parodies of well-known calypsos. So, a poem about poets and poetry. It's called If I Was a Top-Notch Poet. No irony meant there at all. If I was a top-notch poet, like Chris Okigbo, Derek Walcott, or T.S. Eliot, I would write a poem so damn deep that it's bittersweet. Like a precious memory will make you weep, will make you feel incomplete. Like when your lover leave. And though defeat you concede, still you beg and you plead, till you win a reprieve and you're ready for rock steady, but the music done already. Still, in the meantime, with me rhythm, with me rhyme, with me rough bass line, with me own sense of time, goon poet have to step in line. Kabuta lazy might have got couple thousand, but Mandela for him thousands of thousands of thousands of thousands. If I was a top-notch poet, like Kamau Brathwaite, Martin Carter, Jane Cortez or Amiri Baraka, I would write a poem so rude and rootsy and subversive that it make the goon poet turn white with envy. Like a candomblé voodoo kumina chant, a old-time calypso or a slave song, that get banned. But from granny right down to grand picnic, each and every one can recite that they one. Still, in the meantime, with me rhythm, with me rhyme, with me rough bass line, with me one sense of time, goon poet have to step in line. Kabuta lazy might have got couple thousand, but Mandela for him thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. If I was a top-notch poet, like Chikaya Yotamsi, Nicholas Gowen, or Lana Goodison, I would write a poem so beautiful that it's simple. Like a plain girl with good brains and nice ways, with a sexy disposition and plenty compassion, with a sweet smile and a subtle style. Still, me nah go bow and scrape and go on like a ape, peddling no puerile parchment of ethnicity, with only a vague fleeting hint of authenticity. Like a Black Lance Percival in reverse, or even worse, a babbling buffoon will lose him tongue. No, sir, not at all. Me got me rhythm, me got me rhyme, me got me rough bass line, me got me own sense of time. Goon poet have to step in line. Kabuta lazy might have got couple thousand, but Mandela for him thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. Thank you all very much.